Hello, 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 fine people. How are we today? Say hi. Let me know if audio is working. I just had to do some updates, firmware updates for this Rodecaster situation. So let me know. Let me know if we're good. Let's see. Just checking in on chat. What's up? What's up? What's up? Karen, there's a bunch of videos. I would go to the Etch YouTube channel. There's a 2-hour live stream demo walkthrough situation. There's a couple getting started videos. There's some videos on my channel building things with it. We're going to be building in it today. So there should be no shortage of looking at Etch. Okay, what's the agenda for today? We are essentially going to be building some basic fundamental type patterns. We're going to be exploring the concept of creating patterns and building, let's say, in a framework-agnostic way. This actually ties into a lot of debates that I've been having regarding Gutenberg and blocks and pattern portability and things like that, because there's this idea that you can't you have to pick a framework to create standards, but not everybody is going to inherit that framework essentially or work to that framework. So thus, it's just not possible. It's not possible to create like truly shareable patterns unless everybody is using the same framework. I've been saying that that's not actually the case. That would be a misnomer. So we're going to take a look at what I mean by that and an example of building in a framework agnostic way where you can have standards. And then for the people that don't follow the standards, things still work. They don't actually break. But we'll also look at pros and cons of like frameworked development because it's very clear that that's an important thing to follow. You can ask questions. We will be doing Q&A periodically throughout this. Just hashtag Q so that I can find your questions. They can be on anything, by the way. So you can ask questions about dev, design, Etch, SEO, business, agency, freelance, whatever, sales, marketing. It can be on anything. So hashtag Q, and I will find those questions and answer them as we go. Let's see. Kevin, can you link to those from the site? I mean, I could for sure. Here's the thing, we're Etch sales right now is we open the cart for people who know they want it, right? So people have been following the progress, following development, following the change logs, watching the videos, seeing the live streams. So people that know they want Etch, the current website is not designed to sell people on Etch. The current website is not designed to say, hey, you should buy Etch and try it. Because actually, if you came off the street today, you didn't know anything about Etch, you didn't know what was going on with it, and you just bought it thinking like, ooh, this is a new super advanced like page builder development environment thing. That sounds cool. I think I'm going to buy it and start using it. Well, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't buy it and start unless you're opting in for like the risks associated with using an alpha pre 1.0 product, right? You shouldn't do that. You should, but if we design the website to sell everybody on it, they might do that. They might do that, and they wouldn't have a great experience. They might not see all the messaging around like, hey, this is not like a 2.0, 3.0 product that you're buying. This is a pre 1.0. If they miss that, they're going to have a bad first impression because their expectations are wrong, right? So the website is set up the way that it is. It's not like trying to really sell people on using Etch. The cart is open for the people who know they want it. So if you don't already know you want it, maybe you should wait until later to buy it, right? That's kind of the deal right now. All right, let's see. Man, I feel like my headphones are like, I don't know. The sound is cutting out. It's in my headphones. I'm not sure why. All right, if you guys say the audio is good, I guess it's good. I'll just deal with it. Okay, let me share my screen. Let's go screen plus cam. That should work. Are we good? Are we good? Okay, we look good. I was going through here like here's the thing, basic patterns. You would be surprised. I've been watching some Divi people, some Elementor people, some Generate people, some Breakdance people, and even very basic fundamental layouts. They don't really know exactly how to construct them. And that's what we need to talk about. It's like a ducking issue on the audio. That's really annoying. I did a firmware update. See, this is why I never do, it was fine. It was fine before. I do a firmware update. Now I got a new problem. All right. So at least I shouldn't do them right before. You know what? I might do this. We might go 1 year. Okay. So where were we? Like, you should be able to do these things. You should know exactly how these things are constructed. So if that is you, you don't necessarily have to say, hey, that's me. Yeah, I don't know how to do it. But this is a great live stream for you. This is going to be a really good live stream for you to just get on the same page. And what I was doing is just going through like some alpha frames, some Bravo frames, I think would probably be good. And we'll just find some common patterns and layouts for the people who just don't really know. Because there's a lot of people like, I can't start from scratch. Like I can't. But you should be able to. You should be able to start from scratch. You shouldn't have to rely on these things. Like, these things are great, like frames, pattern library. They're fantastic for speeding up workflow, but they shouldn't be what you rely on. Like, you should be able to do it. If you didn't have the pattern library, you should be able to do it. It's not saying that you should do it from scratch every time, but you should be able to do it from scratch. You understand what I'm saying? There's a big important distinction there. So we can do something like, and by the way, we have to start building the frames anyway, right? So I felt like this might be like a start to doing it. Can I get like can I get this to open in a new tab? Let me hold Command when I click that. Where did that one go? That one, did I lose my search? I don't need, no, these are still alpha. It was in the load more. Okay. Let's come down and let's find that one that I was about to do. I'm going to open these in a new tab so that we can keep them open. By the way, if you see any in the frames library that you're like, ooh, I want to see that one in particular, we can do that. And we may not do every single little detail. We're probably going to do like most of it and then move on to another one so that we can get another concept going. Here it was, like content section alpha, hero alpha. Let's go ahead and command click that. Let's pin that one. Okay. So we may start here as what's up with our previews? What's up with our previews? That's an iframe. The iframe is blank. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Well, we may be building them from. We need to figure out why those iframes are empty. Haven't touched that site in a long time, so I don't know why that would be not working. Let's just build it from the thumbnails then. Okay, so we're gonna start with this common basic pattern right here, which is side-by-side content. And you've got your heading, you've got your text, and then you have side-by-side buttons as well. And I think it's important to talk about like how you approach these little details, like these side-by-side buttons. Like, you shouldn't just whip it up, okay? We're gonna talk about all that stuff. What I've done is I've queued up a frames development site in Etch. And so what we'll do is we'll make each page right now, hero section alpha, we'll make each page a frame. We'll start a new page for every new frame. This is just getting started, okay? All right, we are going to save and open and edit with Etch. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a section. Let's see what we've got for spacing, 2420, section 2, 1.5. Okay, all right. These are different from my normal settings, but we'll go with them for right now. All right, so we've got a section, we've got a container. We're gonna name it hero section alpha. Usually go with like this naming situation is also something that we have to talk about a lot, because this is where people are like, man, I don't know how to name things. I don't know what to call it. And I get that naming things is difficult. People will the kind of trope is that, hey, like naming things is the hardest part. But you do need, you should, I'll say, you should develop naming patterns where you're like, okay, I don't have to think. This pattern, this is how I name things. This is just how I name things. And use that same pattern for naming over and over and over and over and over again. And then I do, of course, recommend BIM as well. We always should do things in a certain order when you're building also. And that order is typically structure first, then classes, then styling. So structure, then classes, then styling. All right, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna do the structure first. So the structure is I need an image, right? Which is gonna be wrapped in a figure tag, okay? Now, if you didn't know that that needed to happen, that's okay. You might just throw an image in there and it might not have a figure tag. You might put a div instead of the figure tag. Those things might happen. Those are little details that you're gonna be able to clean up over time, but they're actually unrelated to the structure, okay? So essentially what you should do is say, how many boxes do I need? If you're gonna really simplify this down, how many boxes do I need? Well, I need 2 boxes, because if you're gonna put things side by side, like there's 2 things. Those things are boxes. Okay, just put the boxes side by side, right? So you need 2 boxes. All right, so we're gonna go back in. Let me pin this as well. So this is up here. Okay, so what are my boxes gonna be? Well, flex divs are a pretty safe box. Now you just name your boxes. One of these is gonna be a content wrapper. And if it wraps something, then just call it a wrapper, okay? And this is gonna be a media wrapper. And the only difference here with the media wrapper, like I said, is this should be a figure instead of a div. If you want it to be more semantically accurate and you want it to essentially be able to support a caption potentially in the future, things like that. Now, inside of your wrappers go your content, the things that are being wrapped. If we look at this little thumbnail here, and can I zoom in? There we go, that'll work. We can see that we need a heading, we need a paragraph, and then we need another box. Because anytime you see more than one thing, you need to group them. And the way that you group them is with a box, right? A div. All right, so we're gonna go heading, text, and a box. All right, heading, text, and a box. So that's gonna go in this box right here, the content wrapper. That's why you're naming them, by the way. Because if you look at this, nothing is side by side yet, nothing is styled yet. So how do you know what's what? How do you know what's going on? Well, you name the things. If you name the things, then you know what's going on. So inside of your content wrapper goes your content, your heading, your text, and then another box. Let's name that box so we know what it's for, okay? So we're gonna say button wrapper. Now, button wrapper could mean a lot of things, right? I could probably improve that name by doing something like inline buttons. And this is where we also need to think, and while I'm here, I'm just gonna put in 2 links. Those are gonna be buttons, okay? So we're gonna say button, and we're gonna say button. Now, we don't want to call these the same thing because they're not really the same thing, right? So I could say primary button and I could say secondary button, okay? Because they are 2 different things. They're not the same button. All right, so I've got primary button, I've got secondary button, I've got inline buttons, which describes their layout, which is inline. They're inline with each other, okay? And one thing you would think about here is, is it possible that I'm gonna have more than one set of inline buttons? Well, it turns out that that's quite possible, okay? Quite possible. So you need to kind of think of it as its own little thing, as its own, in BIM, that's called a block, okay? So its own block with its elements. So each button is an element inside the block, which is called inline buttons. And so this inline buttons, here's another way to ask it, could these inline buttons live anywhere? Could they live in a completely different section? Like, are they really related to this section right here? Because if they're not really related to this section right here, then their name should not have anything really to do with this section right here. We need to make it so that these could be picked up and moved and put somewhere else, and it would still make sense. The names, the classes, it would all still make sense, right? See, this heading, this text, this content wrapper situation, this media, this all belongs to Hero Section Alpha. We're not gonna necessarily pick this up and move it, so it wouldn't make any sense to do that. So they're gonna be named according to the section that they are in. But these inline buttons, that's a different situation because we could definitely use those many other places. So we're not really going to name these related to this section with a little caveat. We're going to talk about the caveat in just a second. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go inline buttons like this. And I'm going to essentially put the utility classes on here. Buttons are a situation where perfect use case is utility class. Now, can it have a custom class? Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a second. But you should default to what are my button utility classes that are going to actually do the job here, right? This would be button primary. And then you would want to say, like, what is your button, what is your alt style? Typically, it's the same. It's button primary, but it's also button outline, right? So that's like a classic way to do it. So I can do button primary and I can do button outline. And there now I have a primary and a secondary button situation. I don't have to worry about the styling right now. A framework really helps here, considering that buttons are actually a framework in themselves. There is an entire underlying framework simply for managing button styles. And it is actually one of the most complex mini frameworks in existence. If you don't use a framework in your development, you are going to be doing a phenomenal amount of work. Just on buttons, you could spend an hour ensuring that things are done so that your buttons are consistently managed. Probably more than an hour if you've never done it before. So, it's just tremendous time saving to be able to go, yeah, that's my primary outline, let's move on with my life. It's all kind of done for you, but we'll get there. We'll get there. What we're going to do first is make these buttons go in line with each other, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is display of flex direction of row, okay? So that will put them in line with each other. One problem, though, that we're going to run into right off the bat is this box that I put these buttons in is really wide. It's full width. It goes all the way across, but my buttons are not that wide. Okay, and you can see this if I put like a background color on here, right? So you can see that box goes all the way across. These buttons don't go all the way, and I don't want the buttons to go all the way across. I essentially want this inline buttons wrapper to be the same size as the things that are inside of it, right? So we need to manage this box a little bit. We set the display so that the buttons go side by side, but we need more box management, okay? So what I want to do is I want to put a max inline size. This is also known as a max width, okay? Inline size is the logical property for width. I'm going to put a max inline size of max content, okay? And that is going to say, okay, what is the maximum amount of content that is in here? That's how big I'm going to be. And now my wrapper conforms perfectly to my buttons. I can go ahead and take the background of red off of there now. And so 3 lines of CSS essentially get me the situation that I was looking for with my buttons. And if I ever want, another set of inline buttons, bang, easily duplicatable, I'd probably end up turning this into a component at some point. There's a lot of things that we can do here, but we're gonna essentially move on. So I've got my media wrapper. I'm gonna put in my media for my media wrapper. And what you want to do, I will tell you, we're gonna go really quick over here. You should work with real images unless you're specifically designing a section to support SVGs. Like we have an SVG placeholder, and I would not recommend using SVGs unless you're specifically designing the section to work with SVGs, because SVGs behave differently from real images. They do not behave the same. Therefore, you might make decisions based on how the SVG is behaving that don't apply to images or vice versa. So I would say put in the kind of media that you're actually going to be working with. Let's go to Squoosh. Okay, let's pull this in, pull this in, pull this in, pull this in to 1920, drop that to a WebP, and bang, let's do that. Okay, so let's go back in and let's get this media put in. All right, we're gonna do this. I already had some photos in there, but I like this cute little house, okay? All right, so what we're gonna do is get these things side by side now. But before we start styling, we've gotta assign classes to these things so that we can style properly. And I'm gonna auto BIM this entire situation. Even though, I'm gonna open up and find these inline buttons. even though we mentioned, this inline buttons thing is not really necessary to be part of the BIM situation. It's got its own block with its own class and its own thing going on that we're going to be able to use anywhere. But I'm still going to make it part of the auto BIM scenario, and I'm going to explain why, okay? And this is very confusing to a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be confusing, okay? It's very easy to understand. You just need it explained to you, okay? So I'm going to right-click, create BIM classes. All of these things have classes now, okay? Hero section alpha inner, hero section alpha content wrapper, hero section alpha heading. Now I'm free to style, and I won't give up any scalability, maintainability like I would if I was styling at the ID level or using generic ridiculous classes with stupid names or any other number of techniques that you'll see on video after video after video on the internet. This is the most logical, most organized, most scalable, most maintainable way to approach this. Okay, so I'm going to take the inner. We're going to get this to go side by side. Now here's where people get confused. And this is kind of like this is like a basic structure course, basic CSS. This is all this live stream is dedicated to is basic structure, basic CSS, basic naming patterns and conventions. Okay, because you're going to do and you're going to notice you end up doing a lot of the same shit over and over and over again. And so you're going to gain a lot of confidence. You just do it a few times and it's like, oh, I know how to solve that problem. I know how to get those things side by side. Oh, I know I should be grouping these things. Okay, I'm just going to put it in a box. Okay. Simple stuff. Let's stay simple, simple, simple stuff. So here's where beginners get confused. I could do this, okay? Flex direction of row. All right, row. There you go. I mean, that's side by side, okay? But I could also get these things side by side a completely different way. A completely different way. For example, I could say display grid. And then I could use a variable like var grid 2, but I would have to change, instead of flex direction, I would have to do the grid property, right? Which is grid template columns, all right, columns. And I get the exact same effect. But I could, once again, just do this a completely different way. I could take this grid template columns and I could remove it and I could put a media query here and I could do like a width greater than 768. And then I could come in, I could paste that and it would still be 2 columns. And it's like, why? There's so many pathways to doing the same exact thing or seemingly the same exact thing. That's good and bad, by the way. That's good and bad. But how do you know which one to go with? And the answer is very, very simple. Every technique, just because it gets you to the destination, it doesn't mean there's no trade-offs, okay? There's a list of pros and cons with everything you choose to do in CSS. It is a game. It's not a game of getting to the destination. That is the mistake everybody makes. They think, hey, I just need to know how to get to the destination. And whatever gets them to the destination, that's the pathway that they go with. But what you need to understand is that every pathway has trade-offs and costs, okay? And consequences. And so the outcome looks the same, but the consequences are not necessarily the same. And so there's also preference that comes into play. There's also general rules of thumb. So one of the general rules, so if somebody says, well, should you use flex here or should you use grid? You should default to the general rules of thumb and what the typical best practices suggest. And what is the tool for that you're using, right? It's like, can you take a mallet and hammer a nail? Yeah, like, I bet you would get the nail to go into the wood. Is that what the mallet's made for, or was the hammer made for that? Like, well, the hammer was made for that. The hammer is a better way to do that. But somebody could argue with you. They could sit there all day, but the mallet works, Kevin. I mean, the mallet. I could use a mallet if I want to, Kevin. I mean, you're not the boss of me. I'm still a pro if I use a mallet, right? Like, there's this whole, and it's just like, what are we fucking arguing about? Just the hammer is for that fucking purpose. We don't have to argue about every single little, like, just because you want to use the mallet, we don't have to have this conversation. Like, if you want to do it, that's fine, but that's not what that's for. Like, I get that you got it done, it's just, but that's not what it's for. So we can use the hammer, right? So here in this situation, grid is for structural layouts. Like, it is the better thing in most cases, the vast majority of cases. Grid is the better technique for structural layout. Flex is the better technique for alignments. So when I need to align this content right here, okay, let's go align items to the center, or I need to justify the content to the center. Flex is the tool for that. Grid is not the tool for that, right? In most cases, like 9 times out of 10. You could get that to the center using grid. Is that the best way to do it? 9 times out of 10, it's not the best way to do it, okay? So just as a general rule of thumb, like, just use the tool that was designed for the purpose that you're trying to carry out, right? If you see a nail and you need to go into the wood, just pick the hammer. You don't have to overthink it. Okay? So structural stuff, I use grid. In here, I will use flex, right? Now, let's go back to this and say, okay, what is this situation going on here? And I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so that we can see. This does the exact same thing, okay? Seemingly does the exact same thing. The difference is when I go down to this breakpoint and I go down to this breakpoint, and it's now, you see we're running into a problem, okay? We have a problem here. If I went back to the way that I did it previously, and then I went down and previewed, you see we don't have a problem, okay? Now, you could also do it like this. And again, this is why everybody gets confused, but I'm making a point here that you don't have to be confused, okay? I could change that greater than to a less than and make that say grid 1. Now we go down and we see, do we have a problem? Oh, less than or equal to, okay? 768, boom. Now we don't have the problem. So there's 2 different ways, and either way we go, we don't have the problem. Which way is better, okay? We have this way, here's A. Let's call this A. This is A. I'm gonna let you guys vote. And then we're gonna explain why. There is an objective right answer versus a wrong answer. When I'm saying which way is better, one of these is objectively better than the other. And we can talk about why, okay? I'll let you decide. This is A, okay? And then we're gonna do B, which is this. Okay? Let me zoom out so I can actually see what the heck I'm doing. All right, this is B. This is B, okay? Which one's better? They both get you to the same spot. They both get you a 2-column layout that goes to 1 column at 768. Okay, they both do the same thing. They both don't have a problem. One is still objectively better than the other, okay? B is better. Everybody's saying B is better. B. Okay, good. I'm glad we agree. Why is B better? B is better because it does things more efficiently. Well, here's what A does. Let's look at A. So I'm going to take this. This is A. So I go grid template columns, grid 2, and then width is less than or equal to 768. We're going to grid 1. Same outcome. There we go. Responsive grid. Great, fantastic. What I'm doing here is I am declaring a 1-column grid. Display grid without grid template columns. I don't even need grid template. That is a 1-column grid right there. We're looking at a 1-column grid. So I'm declaring a 1-column grid. Now let's add the next instruction in. I'm saying, no, don't be 1 column. Be 2 columns instead of 1. And it's being 2 columns instead of 1. Then I'm coming back and I'm saying, but hold on. When the width of the device is less than 768 or equal to 768, I want you to be 1 column. So what we did is we said, okay, I know you're 1 column. I need you to be 2 columns, but wait, at this thing, I need you to be 1 column. Well, it was already 1. Why are we going from 1 to 2 back to 1, right? What we're saying with this line is we take that out. We're saying, hey, I recognize that it's already 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say when the width is greater than 768, let's just make it 2. And if the width is not greater than 768, it'll be 1, which is what we want it to be anyway, right? So you're like leveraging its initial state. okay? Versus saying, okay, ignore the initial state, do this instead, and then go back to your initial state at this other rule. This is way more efficient. Now, is one of these wrong? No, not necessarily, not really, right? Depends on what your goal is. But like, if your goal is to be efficient, then the way you did it first is wrong, okay? This is right, the other one is wrong. But if you're just doing web development and you're trying to accomplish a goal, like of, okay, I need a 2-column grid that is responsive, then neither way is wrong, right? So this is where you build in just the concept of, I can do things better, I can do things more efficiently, and I can just essentially deploy better skills, right, throughout a project versus, less efficient skills, okay? So there's these different categories of like objectively right versus objectively wrong, or just more efficient or less efficient. There's different ways to grade these things. But what we've done right here is essentially created hero section alpha. And of course, we could put in content and all this other kind of stuff. We would want to account for this inline button situation where maybe it's supposed to go to one column at a certain breakpoint. Like we could look down here at less than 480. Maybe we say this, right? So this is display flex direction row, max inline size of max content. And then we could come in here and we could say media, and we'll say width of less than, and then 480 pixels, okay? 480 pixels, maybe I'll say less than or equal to. This is the new range syntax, by the way, if you're not familiar with this. So media less than, blah, 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 blah. We could do max inline size of 100%, and then we could target the buttons that are inside of there. Okay, so we'll target all of the direct children. We'll say width of 100%. We'll also change the flex direction to column here. Okay, and this is the kind of situation that you would get if you added these instructions in at this breakpoint. And this would affect all of your inline buttons, right? You could even tighten up the gap to content gap divided by 2 or something like that, so the buttons are a little bit closer together. There's a lot of adjustments that you can make here. What I want to do is I want to explain this situation where we have inline buttons, hero section alpha inline buttons. So there are 2 classes on here. One is not even being used. You see it has no styles whatsoever, okay? Let's explain this situation, because you will see this often in frames. In frames where we have a block that can live anywhere, but it also has this other class for this other thing where it was originally created, perhaps. Now, inline buttons is this. If we were going to name this kind of class, like what kind of class is this? This is obviously a BIM class, right? This is a BIM class as well. But we could give it another name, like almost like an insurance class. That's what I would call it. I would call it an insurance class, okay? And here's why. This class, inline buttons, describes its default behavior. This is how inline buttons behaves across my entire project. However, there could be a scenario where in the context of hero section alpha, I need inline buttons to kind of behave a little bit differently. So how would I manage that? You manage that with this kind of like insurance class, where it has a class associated with the section that it's in. And it's okay if this has no styling whatsoever. Let me go back to the inline buttons. So this class right here, it has no styling. Well, in Etch, actually nothing will be output in the style sheet. It won't be like a blank, it'll just be nothing will be output, right? But if I needed it, like for example, I'm just gonna do something here, like order -1, okay, would put it at top. That is in the context of hero section alpha only. My inline buttons are not going to behave that way anywhere else. They're only going to behave that way in hero section alpha. So it's like an insurance class that gives me additional flexibility for 0 cost. There's no cost to having that class, but I do get added flexibility, right? And so this is where it makes sense. You have like more than one class on something. One is context specific, one is non-context specific. You might not even use this one. And some people will be like, well, if you're not going to use it, why would you have it? Isn't that what fucking insurance is for? That's what insurance is for. You have it and you hope you don't need it. You might not need it, right? But it's okay to have it. It's probably good to have it actually. Okay, that's why I call them insurance classes. All right. So this is like a good structure. So we've accomplished like hero section alpha. We just walked through it. We're good to go. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna hop out. And actually, we could just go to the Content Hub here. We could go to Pages and we could just create a new page. Let's go to the library again. And again, if you have any that you really want to see, let me type in Bravo this time. Let's see if there's any Bravo scenarios that we want to take a look at maybe doing. So let's go up here. I'm doing Alpha Bravos, and they tend to be some of the more basic frames, okay? I don't really see anything like more interesting in here. I've done a lot of card scenarios, okay? Okay, let's do this features section, Bravo, because it's quite simple, but it involves a non-simplistic scenario, especially now that we're talking about development in the context of proper components and things like that. So let's take a look at feature section, Bravo. All right, so I'm gonna go in here, feature section, Bravo, 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 just like that. Let's create that page, okay? And let's go ahead and jump over to that page. Okay, now we're in feature section, Bravo. I'm gonna go ahead and section this out. Feature section, Bravo. And then what did we call this last time? We had an inner, right? We're not gonna do that this time because the situation with feature section, Bravo is very different. We do need two boxes, and I wish I could draw. I lost my drawing app. Yeah, I don't think I have it anymore. So just watch my mouse. That is a box right there. It's a special kind of box. And this is another box, which is also a special kind of box. So if your two main boxes in your section are special kinds of boxes, don't name them something generic, right? Like inner. There's no inner here. There's no inner happening. Okay, there's two different things and they're very specific things. One is an intro, one is a grid. So that's what we're gonna call our two main boxes, intro and grid. But again, you need to pause, okay? You need to ask yourself, this intro right here, is it highly probable that I'm gonna use an intro in lots of different sections? The answer is yes, okay? I'll give you the answers to the quiz. The answer is yes. You are going to use an intro in many. Now they might look different. That's not the question I asked. The question I asked was, is every section going to have an intro? And if the answer is like, yeah, pretty much, then we should account for that. We should absolutely account for that. And we can do that with components, okay? So I'm gonna call this intro. I'm gonna call this section intro because intro like by itself, the name intro, like intro to what? What are we introducing? Are we introducing a list? What are we introducing? Well, we're introducing a section, the section topic, the section heading, okay? So let's call it a section intro. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a heading and I'm gonna put text. And in this case, I'm going to put a CTA as well, which is gonna end up on the right-hand side. So I'll put that in as well. Okay, so I've got an intro with heading. I'm gonna call this a lead, just because that's how I name things. Because that's a journalism term. The lead is like the introduction to something. It's like you're setting the stage for it, right? So just the name I like to use. It's a non-confused, like when you understand what that is, you already know what is the purpose of that paragraph. It's very clear, okay? And then I could say something like CTA, okay? And maybe I say primary CTA, okay? Now you could say primary button like I did in the last one. But here's the thing is that may have been a bad name. And this is where you can go back and recognize, all right, maybe we made a mistake with that name. Because what if we want the primary to CTA to not be a button? What if it's just gonna be a link? Well, we named it button, but it doesn't look like a button anymore, does it? So there's a lot of like philosophy that goes into naming. And the good thing about it, if you use proper tools, okay? So I can go to something like my style manager right here. And I only named them in the structure panel. I didn't name them with their classes, but you could rename a class that you used a bad name for, okay? That's really, really valuable. But I'm gonna call this primary CTA. And I will also put a button primary class on here, okay? And then as we build out a component, you're gonna see I might need options for the person choosing, and the person being myself when I come and do my next section and I put an intro in, right? Choosing what kind of button goes there, maybe choosing how many buttons go there, whether those buttons are inline or not inline or whatever, okay? We can build potentially a lot of flexibility in. I'm gonna call this section heading, and then for this text, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna do lorem 15 and tab, and that's gonna put some lorem text in there. Okay, so fantastic. I've got this thing called a section intro. I like all my names. I'm gonna right click, create BEM classes. These are not part of feature section Bravo, though they may end up getting, end up getting a feature section Bravo BEM class, but that's gonna be an insurance class, not the main class, okay? All right, we're gonna leave this section intro. We'll come back to it in just a second. What is the other box that we need? It appears to me that this is a grid of cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those must be grouped together. One, in order to be a grid, but just for general organization purposes, we don't want these cards floating around and then try to, like, how are we gonna manage that situation? Group them together, group everything, okay? Everything that lives together should be grouped together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a container. That is a section level grouping context that is my website width, my content width of my website, right? If we look at this, content width, everything aligns with content width. So I'm gonna use a container. Container is content width. What am I gonna call it, okay? Feature grid Bravo. Feature grid Bravo. You could do feature section Bravo grid, right? Feature section Bravo _grid, but it's really a block in itself. It's really, it could live other places. It could live other places. So this is the more flexible way to name it. Okay, inside of that, we're gonna need our cards, right? So that's a flex, we only need one of them right now. And we're gonna call this, we're gonna pretend this is a block in itself, right? It's gonna be feature card Bravo, okay? All right, and then we're gonna be very careful when we do our BEMing here. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna do a technique called BEMing from the inside out for a very specific reason, okay? Because we don't want things to get muddy here, but you'll see why. But let's go look at what are we doing. We need, oh, look at this. A thing next to a thing. A thing next to a thing. Whenever you see a thing next to a thing, you should probably put it in a box. So I need a box and I need text, right? So I'm gonna come in, we're just doing this piece by piece. I need a box and then I need some text. There we go. This is gonna be the heading wrapper, okay? This is going to be we'll call this description. This is the feature card Bravo description, and it's a paragraph. What's gonna go in the heading wrapper? Well, I saw two things. I saw an SVG and I saw a heading. There's my two things, right? Let's make this an H3. And we're gonna say card heading. And then I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna ask for some lorem text. There's lorem 15, that should be enough, okay? So now I have a heading wrapper. Feature card Bravo has a heading wrapper. It has an icon, I'm gonna name that icon, okay? And it has a heading, and then it has a description. I'm satisfied with that. That's all we need, right? There's nothing else is going on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and create BEM classes. I'm gonna BEM from the inside out. The inside-most element is this card, block, I should say. The inside-most block is this card. So I'm gonna BEM that first. Feature grid Bravo does not need BEM. It just needs feature grid Bravo. It just needs its own class. It's a block with no elements. Right? There are no elements. Let's make sure we understand this. Another point of confusion for a lot of people. There are no elements inside of this grid. None whatsoever. There is another block inside of the grid. There is no elements, okay? If you're using BEM convention, you have to understand the difference between a block and an element. Elements are things that go inside a block. This card has elements. These are elements inside this card. But this is a block. This card is a block inside of another block. This block grid does not have any elements inside of it, okay? So it's just gonna get its own class and nothing else. So we have feature card Bravo inside of feature grid Bravo, which is inside of feature section Bravo. Put the class on there because this is a section with no elements. It only has blocks as children. Therefore, we don't need any underscore situations happening, right? The underscore, let me copy this, okay? You have block, double underscore, element, right? You don't need this situation if there are no elements. The only place that there are elements, let me put that back, okay, is in my section intro and in my feature card Bravo, which is why feature card Bravo, double underscore heading wrapper, double underscore icon, double underscore description. Okay, you see how that's working? And then up here, section intro, double underscore heading, double underscore lead, because those elements belong to the intro. But the intro is a block in itself. It is not an element of feature section Bravo, even though it happens to live there. In BIM convention, it is not an element. It is its own thing because I can pick this up, move it somewhere else, and put it down, and it will still make sense. Okay? All right, fantastic. Is anybody lost on this BIM situation right here? And I wanted to specifically encounter this situation because it's one of the most important aspects of understanding BIM and how it works, right? Okay. And I see some questions coming in. We will definitely get to those questions. Let's see. When you recommend using your CSS in each element or use it in the parent elements? We'll talk about that for sure. Can you do a header, even a simple one? Yeah, 100%. We'll do that next. We'll do a header next, okay? All right. So let's talk about this now. Feature grid Bravo, feature card Bravo. What if I duplicated this, right? Bang, bang, bang. Isn't there 4 of them in my example here? Okay. How do we get these cards to be side by side, as Bev would say, right? A person in the know would say, we need those in a grid. Bev would be like, I need them side by side, right? So how do you get these things side by side? Well, didn't we set a rule earlier that if you're doing structural layout, you should use grid? So that's the answer. We don't have to, you don't have to have any more debates about it. That's the answer. You're doing structure, default to using grid, okay? So we're gonna come down here. What did we learn last time, right? That if we do display grid, let's zoom in a little bit here. That if we do display grid, we have created a 1-column grid. Now, I want it to be 4 somewhere, maybe 2 somewhere as well, right? I want it to be 2, I want it to be 4. We could also get into the topic of auto grids, which we're not gonna get into right now. We're gonna do it the old-fashioned way, which is at this breakpoint I want it to be 2, and at this breakpoint I want it to be 4. But we already learned what is the most efficient way to do it. It's to use a min width media query. These are what you would call mobile first media queries, right? And there's this big debate, mobile first or desktop first. And I'll give you the answer to the debate, okay? You ready for the answer? People who talk about mobile first and desktop first present it as a black and white scenario. Are you mobile first or are you desktop first? And the answer is, depending on the situation, one is going to be more efficient than the other. There is no always mobile first, always desktop first, mobile first always better, desktop first always better. The actual answer is, in different scenarios, mobile first might be more efficient, desktop first might be more efficient. That's just the answer, okay? If we're in a situation like this, it's more efficient to go mobile first because we already have what we eventually want on mobile, which is 1 column. And so we're just gonna decide at width of greater than 768 pixels, right? I might go grid template columns, okay, of grid 2. All right, now let's zoom out and see what we get here, okay? Boom, right? And then I make a more specific, and I come here and say, actually at 992, we wanna go with 4, okay? 992, we might wanna go with 4, all right? So now we're getting our responsiveness going, starting from essentially the bottom up, right? We're starting from mobile going up to get our eventual layout, okay? Oh, and I see another situation here where we've used gaps for our spacing and we have perfectly even spacing. And there have been many of content creator who have said things like, you shouldn't use gaps because you don't always want even spacing. Just things I can't compute in my brain. I don't know why it doesn't compute in their brain, But this is a ridiculous thing to say. That's a ridiculous thing to say. Because the solution is it's right there. It's so easy. Okay, let's talk about it. So let's just check the responsiveness real quick. I hit the wrong button. Let's go down here. Let's go here. So 1366, I'm still good. 992, we break down to 2. 768, we break down to 1. 480, we're still good. Okay. Now, you might want to make decisions at different breakpoints. That's completely up to you. You come in, you change the numbers, you're good to go, okay? But we got a responsive 4-column grid. We got our introduction situation, which we're going to make a component in just a second, okay? But I want to talk about this even spacing situation so that we can fix it. I'm using automatic CSS. I'm using Etch. I'm using auto spacing. Okay, so if you go in here and you go to spacing and you come down here to contextual spacing, you see that we have something called a container gap, a content gap, and a grid gap. And if you go down here one more level, you see I have auto content gap on, which means that in content areas, I'm going to get content gap by default, which is just a nice amount of spacing between your content. And that means this container and this parent container are using the exact same gap value, content gap, and it's perfectly even. We have perfectly even spacing. And you would say, Kevin, I want less spacing between the icon and the heading because that looks better. And the content creators who can't think past step 1 would go, well, see, this is the problem with gap right here. You end up with even, equal spacing. It's not what you want in every situation. They just they're saying nothing. Just however long those videos are, it's just a whole lot of nothing. 17 minutes of nothing, saying absolutely nothing. Here's how you deal with it, okay? You go to gap. It's like, this isn't even, what is this, not possible? Okay, I do my content gap, which I already have, and I say divided by 2, and I get half my content gap. And not only do I not have uneven spacing, I still have symmetrical spacing, and I've actually made a spacing decision here that is still in the context of content and still relative to my other content spacing. So that if I ever change content spacing in the future, like let me go here, okay, let's bring this panel out here, content gap becomes larger, right? All of this gap situation right here and here stay related to each other. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. That's really good. That's really helpful. This is why you can build an entire website with ACSS if you follow the right methodology and change and or set all the values of everything at the end. You can't do that with anything else. You can do that with ACSS because everything stays relative to the things it's supposed to be relative to. So you can see here that I've achieved uneven spacing with gaps, okay? Didn't need any margins, didn't need any negative margins, didn't need, just here we go. We got uneven spacing using gaps, okay? No problems, there's no problems here. Not only is it very efficient, it's still the most contextually relevant that it could possibly be, okay? So yeah, people like to make videos just saying a whole lot of nothing. All right, let's talk about this intro situation. So we're gonna go right click. We're gonna make a component out of this section intro because this is an obvious scenario where, hey, there's gonna be a gazillion of these things. We're gonna need them to behave differently depending on where they're put, okay? So what we're gonna do is right click, create component. We now have a section intro component. And all I'm gonna do is quickly create prop, okay? For heading, description, button text, button URL. It'd be primary button text, primary button URL, situation like that. I probably need 1, 2, 3, 4. I could also do like a style prop. We might not get into that right now because we're talking mainly structure, okay? But I'm gonna go section heading. I'll go section lead. I'll go primary CTA text, and then I'll do primary CTA URL, okay? So very clear names here. I am gonna go bang, bang, bang with our assignments, right? Just click on the little target and then click on where you wanna map that to. You know, saying the bang part, that's up to you. I tend to do it. I'm in public right now, so I might not do it. I'm gonna put this in props dot, and let's go, if I do that and that, oh, I hit the wrong bracket. Okay, there we go. All right, I've mapped all my props. I've got everything exactly the way that I want it to be. I could have call to action, a little bit better default text here for this, and then a default URL of maybe #. I'm gonna go ahead and save that component, and I'm going to exit. And as simple as that, I've made a component that now I have global control over the structure, behavior, logic, all of that stuff, any JavaScript that might eventually get attached to it, but I can have instance level control over the content. All right, so I'm gonna delete that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make, because this is our default section style, which is essentially this button way over here next to this thing. Oh, and you're gonna notice thing next to a thing, thing next to a thing. What should you do when you have a thing next to a thing? You should probably add them to a box. You need a box for that scenario, right? Well, I didn't build a box in my initial heading. I didn't put a box in here, but I'm saved by the fact that this is a component. Even if I deployed this 1 million times across a website, I'm saved by the fact that this is a component, right? So I can come in here and I can wrap in a div, for example, but I want a flex div. We don't have wrap and flex div quite yet. So I'm just gonna add that in. I'll drag that in. I want the heading to go inside. I want the lead to go inside. And this I'm gonna say is heading, or I'll say content wrapper, because this is like separate from the CTA. And I already can think ahead. So I'm already gonna say, you know what, it would be safer. It's not really necessary right now, but it would be safer if I had a CTA wrapper as well. And I'm gonna put the primary CTA in there. Now I already BIMmed everything, so I'm gonna need to come in here and say section intro _. I'm gonna copy that to my clipboard for efficiency purposes. Content wrapper, bang, add that. And I need to add one for the CTA wrapper as well. Add that so that those can have their classes as well. But now I have visually the same thing I had before, but structurally now the ability to break these two things apart into a different layout. Now, should I use flex? Should I use grid? Just default to the general rule of thumb. Once again, I'm doing structural alignments, right? So what I'm gonna do is section intro is I'm gonna display this as a grid, and I'm gonna say, I actually do, I want it to be one column on mobile, right? So I should probably go mobile first here, right? Width of greater than 768 pixels. And let's go grid template columns. And then I'm gonna use a, like, what would you call it? An uneven grid, right? So let's go 3 parts content to 2 parts buttons, okay? Maybe in 3 parts to 1 part, something like that, all right? And then let's also go with align items to the center, bang, okay? Now that leaves this scenario right here where this is in a wrapper, which isn't getting its alignments. You can see where let me put a background on here for you so you can see what's going on. So once again, we have, now this situation is caused by the grid needing to fill itself out, right? So it's kind of stretching this box over here and it's leaving this button left aligned in here, which creates a very interesting problem / scenario. But we did accomplish getting this group of things next to this group of things, right? But we do have a little button situation that we want to figure out how to deal with, all right? And we should talk through this because this is a very interesting scenario. And once again, there are probably 10 ways to fix it. And our job, now, if you don't care about this stuff, fix it any of the 10 ways. I'm just telling you, some of those ways may become a pain in the ass later. You may be like, why did I do that? That doesn't make any sense. Or it's gonna cause other problems that you didn't foresee happening, right? So our job is kind of to just give it a little bit of thought and say, all right, what's the kind, there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ways to do this. Are any of those ways like better, right? Better than the other ways. Now, I know that I can align this button from its parent, okay, which is the CTA wrapper. I could align it from itself. You can align self, right? So if you're in a flex situation, I could say, now this is button primary. Oh, look, there's another thing right here. Primary CTA, that's handy, isn't it? A little insurance class, okay? You could do align self end. Does that solve our problem? Yeah, it appears to. It aligns this with the right edge. See, I aligned it from itself, okay? Now, do I want that to always happen? What's gonna happen when this is on mobile? You know, we might, oh shit. That's a problem. Okay, but now we go to the scenario of, well, it was already aligned to the left. Why we align it to the right? Now we're going to align it back to the left? That seems like a game we don't want to be playing, doesn't it? All right, so should I do that here or should I do that at a breakpoint? What if I did that at a breakpoint? What if I did that at width greater than 768? Okay, and I said align self end. Now, I just solved it there. Oh, and I solved it here too. Remember, it's not going to have a red box around it, okay? So I solved it there, I solved it here. That seems like a good situation. Problem is, does anybody see another problem with that, by the way? Maybe we'll just do a pop quiz. What is the problem? Can you foresee an issue with doing it that way? Anybody see an issue with doing it that way? I know I hate the 20 second delay. I always got to sit around fumbling my fingers, twirling my thumbs while we wait for people to answer. That's a question that came in. I'll take a sip of water while we wait. See if anybody can identify what could possibly go wrong with that. Anything possibly go wrong? I will give you a hint. It is not the lead width. We can't make the button full width on mobile. No, we can definitely make the button full width on mobile. We can still make the button full width on mobile. I'll give you a hint. It is related to what is called a disconnection scenario. We've created a potential disconnection, okay? And you should really, that's one of the main things you should always be looking for in web design is where am I creating possible disconnections? Because possible disconnections have a habit of becoming actual disconnections, and then you get a lot of breakage. You get a lot of breakage when you create disconnections, okay? Here's the disconnection. I'll just give it to you because nobody's put it in yet. Align the button to the bottom of the block. Nope, that's not it. Look here. I referenced when I did this grid, okay? Display grid, I'm gonna come down here. Media width greater than 768, I decided that this was gonna be an actual grid at 768 pixels, right? I then came over to this wrapper over here, this primary CTA, and I decided that at 768 pixels, greater than 768 pixels, I would do an alignment. This alignment relies on a breakpoint. Why did I make that breakpoint decision? Why did I decide 768? Because I decided that this would all be a grid at 768. But what if I come over here and decide that this should be a grid somewhere else? Maybe at 992, this should be a grid, right? Now I've got a disconnection. I changed where this became a grid, and that's not gonna inform this. That's not gonna inform this button alignment. Oh my God, something changed. Our rule should change too. There's no way to do that. There's no way to do that. You're probably like, Kevin, just tokenize the media queries. Well, I don't know why, but the geniuses in CSS land still haven't come up with a way to do that. You can't tokenize media queries. So you only have static references. Kind of creates a problem, doesn't it? Kind of creates a problem. So one way that I've fixed it in the past, if you have a disconnection like this, see, some disconnections can be fixed with different techniques. Media queries cannot be tokenized. That would be the way to fix it. That would be the way to, because you could create a locally scoped variable that essentially defines when this section intro is going to become a grid, and everything can reference that. But you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, you kind of can now. I got to do a separate video on that. There's like style queries. There's like a lot of stuff. There's if functions coming. They're actually not fully supported, so it doesn't even matter to teach it yet because it's not supported. But these solutions for these things are kind of coming. But let me go in here and show you how I would fix it right now. So instead of declaring this here, I would declare it from the other area where the rule is set. So section intro media 992. So inside of here, or I would say actually related to this. So we wanted it to be less than 992, or wait, no, greater than 992 is still actually what we want. So we can be inside of that media query. We're gonna do section intro, double underscore, and then the name of that primary CTA. So I think it was just primary CTA, right? And then we're gonna say align self end. And now this rule of aligning that CTA is tied in to the rule of creating the actual grid itself, okay? So that if this ever changes, guess what also changes? This alignment rule. They can't be disconnected now. They're physically attached to each other, right? So I've solved a scenario where we had a potential disconnection. So I'm gonna take that background and now we are good to go. All right. This, by the way, when you talk about like, oh, there's Framer and you could this and that, and you could do AI is gonna no. This is the thinking, the engineering that those tools cannot do for you. They will fuck it up every single time. Okay, they're nowhere near this level of thinking. So this is not possible. You're gonna have a lot of disconnections. If other people are building layouts and patterns like this, you choose, oh, I'm gonna choose Joe Schmo's pattern library. Well, Joe Schmo's pattern library has zero engineering in it, right? Versus a pattern library like this, where we consider these things, we think about these things, okay? And we're using a tool now where like it's inconvenient to do this in other tools, right? Because either they don't support this kind of thing or it's not front and center. It's like hidden away in a bottom panel somewhere and it's 80 clicks to get to. And it's just annoying. It's annoying. But here where it's like front and center and you could just do the thing you want to do and that you're supposed to do and you can see it at all times. It's fantastic. All right, so we got our scenario that we wanted. So let's check this. What does this look like? Perfect on mobile, perfect here. Go up to 992, still fine. Go up. Now it breaks out. It's looking like it's okay. Everything is looking fantastic. I can save, I can exit. Now you might think, Kevin, there's gonna be different kinds of headings. How are we gonna manage that? Well, it's a component. We don't have to care. We do not have to care. This is a scenario of, when we cross that bridge, we'll get there, right? Okay, so when we get to a situation where we need a different intro, we're gonna just build in that additional functionality, that additional flexibility will be built in using props and logic, okay? And we will absolutely be able to accomplish whatever we need to accomplish, all right? We don't have to think about it right now. It's not a problem for solving now. So we are done right here with feature section Bravo. Now I could make the cards. Oh, by the way, let me show you this if we wanted to actually do the detail a little bit further. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say that that's an article, and then I'm gonna right click and say convert to list. And that is gonna give me actually proper semantic HTML. So I have my article inside of a list item, inside of an unordered list, and now I'm really, really, really good to go. And I can save. And yeah, we can talk about the card being a component for sure, it should be, but we're not gonna, well, like, should we, nah, we don't need to do it right now. You get the point, you get the point. We need to move on to a header. Somebody requested a header and I wanna be cognizant of time. We got about 20 minutes left. And I also wanna get to, some questions, all right? So let's go out and, well, actually we don't have to go out. There's nowhere to go to. There's nowhere to go to. We could just go here and we could say header alpha, all right? And we'll just say create page. And then I'm gonna go ahead and go to that page. And now we're in header alpha. Okay. Let's do a very basic header. Let's check in on our chat here. Bev delete something and no idea what to do to fix it. Yes, okay, Kyle got it right. Align the button to the bottom of the block, blah, 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 blah. All good, all good, all good. Okay, Melvin says no sound here. I think that's your audio, Melvin. Melvin, turn on your speakers, Melvin, and you should be good to go, okay? Damn, I'm late again. Okay, no problem. Better late than never. All right, okay. Is this helpful? Is what we're doing helpful? Let's start there. Okay. Oh yes, Lizzie, I have PTS, I have magic area PTSD. The amount of tabs I still open for no reason, the amount of times I try to go back to WP admin for no reason, you almost have to train yourself out. It's like what's that? What do you get when you're a hostage for too long, and you start to, you're comfortable with your abductors? What is that called? That's what I have. That's what I have now. I got to train myself out of it. Got to go to therapy 3 times a week. I'm talking to my therapist about these damn magic areas. Okay, people are saying it's helpful. All right, good. I mean, if we did this almost every week, do you know how many light years beyond the average person using WordPress you would be? Stockholm syndrome. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna do a header. I'm gonna show you how to approach a header, how to make it and we're gonna show you how to put it into a template as well. By the way, I don't know why did I create. I mean, I could just go to the template manager. I could just go to the catch-all index template. I could just do the work right here. Okay, I'm gonna add a section. We're gonna call it header. We are gonna use the word inner because we don't have to overthink it. There's nothing fancy, crazy happening in here. Okay, it's just an inner. It's just inner content. And then I'm gonna change the tag from section to header. And you're gonna see that I lose all of my padding when I do that. Look at this. If this is a section, it's got this nice padding. It also has a gutter that you can't see, okay? You'll be able to see it on mobile. See the space between the container and the edge of the device? That's called a gutter. So it's gonna have that. When I change this to header, all of that is gonna go away. I lose the gutter, I lose the padding, and that's because automatic CSS adds default section padding, but there's no default header padding. I just need to know that I need to add it back myself, right? So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go back to desktop so we can take a look. All right, what are we gonna put in our inner container in our header? We are going to put an SVG. That is going to be our logo. So I'm gonna name that logo. Next thing that we're gonna put would probably be a menu, a nav. And we're having this big debate right now. And this is another Stockholm syndrome scenario I'm trying to train myself out of. It's not called a menu. It shouldn't be called a menu. You should stop using the word menu. We really need, this is very important to talk about. And this is so logical. I don't know how it could be argued with, but people are gonna find a way. They're gonna find a way, okay? To me, you can't argue with this, but people will find a way. I'm gonna add a flex div. And this is going to be called navigation, okay? Why don't we do a pop quiz? What are we gonna change this tag to right here? What is this navigation? I think I just gave it away. What is this navigation's tag gonna be? What is this gonna be? Is it gonna be this? Let's zoom in. Oh, are we gonna write this? What are we gonna write here? What's it gonna be? Huh? Is it gonna be this, perhaps? Yes, it's gonna be this. If you didn't know, it's gonna be this. There is one of these. It's for a completely different purpose. So we probably shouldn't use that word, all right? That's the word we should probably use. It is a navigation, it is a nav. That's the actual element name, okay? Why we call it a menu? Well, Kevin, Bev doesn't know what a nav is. Well, Bev can learn. She has no taste, but she's not dumb, okay? She can learn what a nav is. It's a nav. That's what you should call it. It's a nav. Now we all know what we're talking about. A menu. By the way, I've done a restaurant site or two in my life. The amount of confusion. Well, menu. Are you talking about the restaurant menu or the website menu? What? It's like the Spider-Man meme. Right? What are we talking about here? Hey, we don't have confusing scenarios if we just use words that make sense. I've found that out. I've made a discovery. If we just use the right words, nobody's confused. You say nav, I say nav, we're looking at a nav. Hey, everybody knows what we're talking about. This is like, isn't that the purpose of like language? Okay, and nomenclature. So we need to stop calling it a menu. Now inside of our nav is gonna be an unordered list. By the way, I think did I break it when I was renaming it? What is an im? All right, let's put a nav in there. All right, I need an unordered list and then list items. So I'm gonna do unordered list. I could do this manually, like putting blocks in and all this other stuff. but I don't want to because that's inefficient. I want 5 of these bad boys, and I want them to say list item, and then I want them to be numbered. Okay. Actually, I wanted to say nav item. Okay. And how about they're going to say nav link. All right. So there's my nav right there. Got my unordered list, my LIs. Now we're also going to talk about scenarios where you may not need classes on every element. Okay. What is the menu tag used for? You should go, it's very helpful, go to MDN Docs, okay, and type in menu, right? You should, whenever you have these kinds of questions, you should absolutely go read about it, right? It's a semantic alternative to unordered list, but treated by browsers as no different than an unordered list. It represents an unordered list of items which are represented by LI elements. There also is specific usage notes related to it. In applications versus websites is where it's more useful and where you typically see it. But it is absolutely not a navigation, okay? All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about, because I always say when in doubt, BIM it out. This is actually a scenario where you probably don't need BIM. You probably don't need classes on every child element, okay? I'm going to put the class of navigation. You could do nav, you could do primary nav. That doesn't really matter all that much, okay? If you're gonna have a bunch of navs, you may wanna do like primary nav, footer nav, whatever nav, you know? It's up to you. It's completely up to you. It's completely up to you. I'll do primary nav. Do I need to BIM this? Like I could for sure BIM this, all right? But do I really need to? Not really, because this is such a tightly controlled scenario where are you gonna have more than one unordered list? Only if it's children, but we can still target it properly. If it's a child, like a submenu, that's gonna be a nested unordered list, but I can absolutely cover that scenario without classes, okay? This is a scenario where I actually, and one of the reasons we say to, here, I'll do this real quick. I'll add a section, and I'll put a heading, okay? And this is gonna be an H1, right? H1, let's pretend it's like a hero or something, okay? Okay, my hero heading. You would put a class on here like my section heading, right? You would not do a selector like my section H1, because if that ever becomes not an H1, I lose all my styling. That's bad. We don't want the styling tied to the semantics, typically, unless we do, okay? A nav is a scenario where we actually kind of want the styling tied to the semantics. Because if the semantics change, it means that we fucked up our navigation. Like we broke the navigation. And so styling should alert us to that. Like the styling should break because we ruined the semantics, right? So I would say this is a scenario where you don't actually need that. So like I would come in here and I would style everything pretty much from the parent, okay? So I would do primary nav and I would come down and I would say my direct UL, I want, or really all ULs. In this case, all unordered lists, I want list style none and I want their padding cleared out, okay? So now top level menus, sub menus, they're all fixed by this one rule. Whereas if I BIM them, I might have to come in and identify the different types of lists that are in there and then do this. But here I can just be generic and that's cool, right? It's never not gonna be an unordered list. So I'm good, and I fixed that. Now I can come in also here and I could say display of flex because I'm doing alignments, okay? I'm not doing structure, I'm doing alignments. And then I could say gap of like 1M or something like that. Or I could stick with my content gap situation, okay? Or I could even do a divided by 2. I can do whatever I want here. I could do a divided by 1.5. I can keep it relative to content gap. So if content gap ever is adjusted in the future, my nav spacing kind of follows those adjustments because I am literally spacing out content right here. These are just decisions that you have to make. Okay, let's go to my header. And I'm gonna put a class of header. There's only ever gonna be one main header, right? So I'm pretty good with this. Any other thing that's a header, like a card header, would be like a card __ header. You're not gonna put a generic header class on those things. So you're pretty safe here with a generic class. And what I wanna do is do display flex, flex direction of row. And when do I have to do this row situation? Okay, I'm actually on the wrong thing for this. I wanna be on the inner. Which I can do header, inner, okay? And then I'm gonna say flex direction row, display flex. When do I have to explicitly say flex direction row versus it just doing it on its own? Well, this is supposed to do it on its own, but because we use flex by default, everything is set to columns, because it's a deep discussion we have to go into, more philosophy, right? But anytime it's set to column by default, you have to explicitly set it back to row. And then I'm gonna do align items to the center. It's gonna put those in vertical alignment. And then here's a scenario, common scenario where I see the wrong answer given again. I am gonna do two things. I'm gonna say gap of content gap, okay? Why, quit hitting L on the keyboard. I got fat fingers, man, okay? There's a little gap. I want that nav to go all the way to the other side, okay? So on the inner, what I'm also gonna do is justify content space between, okay? Justify content, oh, hold on, is that my align items space between? Where's my, no, that was correct. Align items center, these axes, always justify content space between, justify items space between. It wouldn't be justify items. It's gonna, oh, okay, I already know. It's gonna be a nav width, there you go, nav width issue. So my primary nav, max inline size, I would like to be of max content. There we go, okay? So what was happening there, they couldn't go space between because one thing was already taking up all the available space, the wrapper for this nav, right? The actual navigation itself. So if I just change that to be the max width of its content, and it can now suddenly, it has enough room to go over there. Okay. So now I want to bring up the question of if I was going to do that, because watch, I'm going to remove the gap. Watch this. I'm going to remove the gap and nothing is going to happen. Nothing happened. So a lot of people say, I've seen them, they say it over and over, well, you don't need a gap there. You don't need a gap there. Why you put a gap there when you're just going to justify space between? Or people will say, I need them far apart or I need them spaced out. Sometimes even when the container's small, they'll be like, we'll just use space between. But you can't do that. You cannot do that. Does anybody know why? Why can't you go without a gap here? You have to have a gap here. Yes, Marcel. See, Marcel has the answer. When we can't pretend that we're only ever on one device, okay? When these things start to get closer and closer together, like I'm gonna come down, see they're getting closer, right? Watch, I'm gonna go down again. Oh, they're getting closer. Ah, they collided. Now doesn't that gap matter? Now the gap matters, right? Now the gap matters. So you've gotta have a gap because this justify content space between only will put space between things if there's space available. Where a gap says, no, you must have a space. Like this is a rule that says there must be space. This is a rule that says, well, I mean, if there's a little space, I guess I'll show a little space. But it doesn't have to. It could literally show no space. So this is a rule that says, nope, space is mandatory. And this is a rule that says, and if there's extra, give me all the extra, okay? So they work together. It's not either or, they work together. Okay, good. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get these to stack, right? So I could take this flex direction row, right? And I could wrap it in a media query, just like we did with grids, right? 7, 6, 8. And then I put the flex direction to row, and now it's gonna be here. And by the way, this align items to the center, justify content space, which one? Is it this align items doing it? It is, right? I only want that to happen when that flex direction is row, okay? And I'm just doing it if we weren't gonna go to like, you know, a hamburger type navigation, whatever. We're not gonna get into all that. For a navigation to be accessible and built properly, we would be here for 3 hours, okay? We're not gonna do that. So let's go back. Let's fix our gutter too, by the way. So I'm gonna go back to 100% here. So now you see these rules are gonna take effect. It's gonna look good, but it's also going to be nice and responsive, 768, there we go. Okay, good. I wanna get my gap, or my gutter. So I'm gonna go back to here. I'm also going to say this header needs to go up to the actual top of the screen, and it's gonna need a little padding. Let's go in here. Padding, I can do this 5 different ways. Padding, I could do space, let's do XS, gutter, right? So, man, that looks confusing. I could do it that way. I could also do it this way. Padding block, I could do space XS, which would make padding inline be gutter. I could also do it this way. Padding top, space XS, padding bottom, space XS, padding left, space XS, padding right, space XS, okay? Or actually this would be these two, left and right would be gutter, okay? So look, oh my God, there's like, what are we doing here? We got 50 different ways to do the same exact thing. Are any of these better than others? Are any of these wrong? Are any of these more efficient? And there's actually more that I haven't done. There's more that I haven't done. I could actually do this. You could literally do this. Not right. Bottom. Dun. Let's grab this one. There. That would work too. This is where beginners are like, I give up, dude. Like, this is ridiculous. What are we doing? Okay, so I'm gonna, Etch does have a whole responsive menu. It's got everything you need. And you just pop it in, boop, just works out of the box. You can style everything. It's all tokenized. It's fantastic. That'll be available actually this week. That'll be shipping this week. Okay, let me explain this, so that we're not all lost and confused. This situation, okay? This situation is outdated. This is like 1997. This is actually how Bricks writes padding CSS, by the way. Very inefficient, not logical properties, old school, just bad. Just get rid of this. We don't need that, okay? Now we have shorthand scenarios. So I'll explain shorthand to you real quick. This is gonna be shorthand. This is gonna be logical. Okay? And that's not my opinion that it's logical. It's literally called logical. These are the logical properties, okay? So shorthand. So when you do 2 values in shorthand, the first value applies to the top and the bottom, the block axis. And then the second value applies to the left and right, the inline axis. You can explicitly define every direction though, and it goes in the order of top, right, bottom, left. This is why it's called shorthand, because it's not explicit. You have to know that. Like, you have to study CSS to have any idea what is going on here. I don't like that approach. Okay, I don't like that. Unless you're putting padding on all sides, I don't like that approach. I don't like it. Because this is efficient, it's explicit, it's easier to read and understand for anybody. If you know what a block axis is and an inline axis, which is far easier to learn than top, right, bottom, left, okay, 4 values, 2 values, no, okay? Padding block says, hey, this is what we're doing on the block axis. This is what we're doing on the inline axis. It's very easy to read, and it's very easy to manage, and it's very easy to change. And then you might be like, well, Kevin, it's not flexible, because what if I want 0 padding on the left, but gutter on the right? Okay, you can still achieve that. It's not stopping you from anything because it accepts two values. One for the top, one for the left, one for the right, one for the top, one for the bottom, okay? So you're not giving up anything here, but you are being more explicit in what's happening, and you are using the new logical properties, which are more flexible, okay? So this is just the better way to do it. If you go through all the scenarios of like pros and cons, consequences, trade-off, like this is kind of just the better way to do it. All right, let's zoom out here. And so we got all of that happening now. What's the consequence here? Things don't touch the edge of the screen on mobile, right? I got my gutter, I got my normal header padding, I'm all good to go. Now, if you're making a real header, right click, create component, it's called header, hit save, hit exit. You don't need any props. You don't need any logic yet. You don't need anything. You might not ever need anything, but you do need it to be a component because you're gonna use it in other templates, okay? And so you need global control over the structure and behavior and the JavaScript that's gonna be attached to the menu and all this other stuff. It needs to be a component. Does that mean it has to have props? No. You can have a component with no props. You can have a component with no logic. You can just have a basic component. That's what this is. No props, no nothing, but it is a component, okay? And so I hit exit. Now, I made a header. I could easily make a footer the exact same way, but we're gonna go to questions. We're gonna go to Q&A. But that's all you need to do to create a header, and you really didn't even need to do the nav part, okay? I just threw in the nav part. And this is literally a basic nav. This is an old school nav. They don't all have to go to a hamburger menu and all this other stuff going on. You could rock and roll with this. One suggestion I would make is that you come into this UL, this nav list right here, and you would say flex wrap of wrap. And you would say, hey, I need you to, if you don't have any space left for the gaps that I said you needed to have, go ahead and wrap to another line, okay? That's what that will do. There's not enough links to make that happen right now, but if it needed to, it would wrap those to another line. That's an old school nav. That's a working functional navigation. That's actually an accessible navigation as well. If you ain't gonna do any fancy shit, navigation accessibility is quite easy, okay? So yeah, that is all good, except for they need the links. I didn't put the links inside of them. They need the links. Okay, so that would be an extra step. Add the actual links. Let's talk about that actually right now. Let's make sure that we do that. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna say href equals, and we'll do a £, bang, and then I'm gonna do that. Okay, and then I'm just gonna say nav link. I'm not gonna count them anymore. I'm gonna grab this, and I'm gonna go bang, bang, bang. Okay, let's get rid of all those. Bang, there we go, okay? Now, let's cover another common scenario where people screw it up royally, okay? If I want these to be like buttons almost, okay? What do I add the styles to? Do I add the styles to the list item, or do I add the styles to the link? There is a right and wrong answer to this. Which one do I style? They would visually look the same for the most part, but one is correct and one is incorrect. We'll go ahead and yeah. Okay, so Kamal got it. He was first. He gets promoted onto the screen. Okay. The reason you style the link is because let's say when you add padding, for example. Oh, I'll just give you an example. Okay, we'll go to our nav and we'll say A, and we'll say padding 1M. Okay, and we'll say background of red. There you go. There's that. And I probably want to say display these as flex so that they actually force their container to get bigger, their parent. All right, so there's a look right there. I'll say color of white. All right, so let's grab this. And now let's change this to LI. From A to LI. Oh my Lord, they look exactly the same. Okay, except the color's not reaching into the A. Can fix that up, okay? Look at this. I'm gonna change this LI to A. They look exactly the same. So a lot of people would look at that and go, it doesn't matter. You got to the same visual outcome. It doesn't matter. You wanna make it an LI, make it an LI. You wanna style the A, whatever. right? But it is completely and utterly wrong to do this to an LI and not the A. For one reason and one reason only. Let's go to the front end. These are now, the entire padding box is now the target for my cursor. And it is also the thing that will get focus, right? If you style the LI, the target for clicking will be only the words, and none of what appears to be the clickable area will be clickable, because LIs are not clickable. And you wouldn't go anywhere if you clicked on it. You need the entire surface area of this thing to be the target, which means you need to, all of your styling creating that surface area needs to be done at the link level so that it maintains its clickable surface area, right? There is an objective right versus wrong scenario. Okay, let's do Q&A. Okay. Let me hop over to hashtag Q. All right, let's try to fly through these as quickly as possible. I never remember to use content grid. Why should I use it? All right, I'll come back to that. How will clients edit content in CPTs created with Etch? Someone's calling me. Okay. How will clients edit content in CPTs created within Etch? How will clients edit content in CPTs? They will use Gutenberg. They'll use the block editor. Can you offer an LTD for 6 sites at 300? Well, this isn't a fucking swap meet. This isn't, what are we doing here? This is a flea market. No, I can't. We can offer what is available on the site to offer. Okay. We can copy and paste the HTML with classes, etc. But what about animated blocks? For example, Nextbricks uses third-party libraries and has some well-animated blocks. What is the plan for this? So any JavaScript that belongs with a pattern will ship with the pattern or the component, right? If you need an external reference to a JavaScript library, you'll be able to put that in, no problem whatsoever. But yeah, everything is going to be compartmentalized and portable, so it plugs and plays anywhere without losing its functionality. How would you componentize the hero alpha, especially the buttons, when, for example, the hero section would have a primary background, thus the buttons can't be primary colors anymore? We could do a separate video on how to do like nested componentization. It's another one of those scenarios where we have to do a lot of talking. Like we got to explain, okay, here's all the ramifications of the decisions that we're going to be making, and here's how it should potentially be architected, right? Okay, any news about frames for Figma plugin? Yeah, it's getting close to being done. Tommy put some teasers in the community. You should go watch the teasers for sure. How are you balancing Squoosh with short pixels? Sometimes the images get too optimized, but I don't want to upload a huge image, obviously. When I use short pixel, I don't use Squoosh. That's the answer. I'm doing Squoosh on here because I have no other image optimization plugins installed. And so I know nothing is going to happen automatically when I upload it. So I Squoosh it right before I upload it, because right now that's on these sandboxes, that's the only pathway to doing it. Notice you are BIMing on the section level. What is your process of deciding where to auto BIM from? So it's section element dependent, whatever. So let me go to Content Hub. We'll go back to Pages, and we'll go back to Hero Section Alpha. Okay. So here we are. So in this, you asked, okay, so the general rule, again, always fall back to general rules of thumb. Are there elements as children or only blocks? Well, in this case, inner is an element of Hero Section Alpha. So this is a clearly auto BIM situation where I auto BIM from the top. Now, if there's something else in here, like inline buttons, is it okay for that to be auto BIMmed along with its own block class, inline buttons? Yes, because that essentially creates what we talked about earlier, which are insurance classes. So it's not a problem for this block to get auto-BIMmed as long as it actually does have its own block classes properly. So in that case, I just put a class on that before I auto-bimmed everything, right? And this figure, this image, this all belongs to hero section alpha. So this is a clear auto-bim situation. But if we navigate somewhere else, okay, so we go to pages and we go to feature section Bravo, for example, here was a scenario where I started auto-bimming from feature card Bravo. Then I moved up and I gave feature grid Bravo a class. Then I did the intro separately, and then all I did was give feature section Bravo a class. I did not auto-bim from the top down. In this case, I worked inside out because these are components to where these are so componentized that, like, do I need an insurance class on them? Nah, I don't feel like I do. Again, because they're also components, I can do things with the component logic if I needed to. But would it be wrong for them to have an insurance class? No, like, it's never wrong to have insurance. Okay. It's just a decision you make. It's just that's just, you weigh pros and cons. You just make a decision and move on with your life, you know? So that's the way that I did the structure there. But there are general rules of thumb. Like, if this thing had no block, the whole thing would be auto-bimmed if it had no block children, you know? But that's why I did this one, because it was a clear scenario where we have this card, which is a block in itself, could be used anywhere. We don't know where that thing's going to be used. So it definitely needs to be a block in itself. We have this intro situation, which we know for sure is going to be used all over the place, right? Yeah. So it's situational. It's situational. And there's general rules of thumb that you fall back on. When you recommend using your CSS in each element or use it in the parent elements. This is hopefully a scenario that will not matter at some point. Okay, so if I went like to this heading, okay, I put a gap on the heading wrapper. Here's the downside of putting that style on the heading wrapper. I go to the card itself. I don't see any of those styles. I can't see what's going on with the CSS inside this card. This is a problem that we hope to solve just with the etch functionality, that we can expose child styles at the parent level. That would solve that scenario. To be clear, nobody has solved this. So we hope to solve it, okay? We hope to solve it. Now, the benefit of this being done here is that when I come back 6 months later and I go, I want to affect this thing, I'm already seeing what's affecting it. Like, you're more prone to selecting the thing you want to touch than you are saying, well, let me go to the parent because I bet it's defined at the parent level. And like, typically you get a little lost in where your styling is, okay? But if you consistently style everything from the parent level, then there is no hunting where you already know, I'm just going to the parent because that's where I style everything. So it comes down to your practice, but as you can see, there's like I could do it this way, I could do it this way. It'll behave this way. If I do it this way, it'll behave this other way. If I do it this other way, the question becomes, could there be a scenario where it doesn't matter how it was done? You get all the benefits and none of the downsides. And that's what we're looking at achieving. We did that with the styling panel. Okay, so style inputs right here. Okay, so if I clicked on this, look at that. Did I write that CSS in that field? No. But we found a way to make you see it there and be able to edit it there if you want to edit it there, even though you didn't put it there. You know, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for these opportunities where we realize in the workflow there's these disconnects. And if we can tie the disconnects all up together with a nice little bow without you having to do anything, then everybody wins. Regardless of the methodology or the workflow you use, you win, right? That's what we're trying to achieve in a lot of these cases. Okay. I did put a component into another component. Is there a way to separate them again? Yes, I showed that. It's a little manual right now. You'll be able to do it more automatic in the future. But yeah, you're not stuck. There is a pathway to doing it. You just copy the HTML, go paste it somewhere else, and the thing will exist outside of the component, and you can do whatever you want to it. But you can also remember that you could just delete it out of, like, I could remove this section intro from this whole situation. Like, Did I just delete my section intro? No, it's like it's right here. I can just add it back anytime I want to add it back. So there it is again. Like it exists in the library, you know? So it just depends on what you're trying to do. Some LIs auto indent. Why is that happening? Because that's how CSS works. So if we go in here, we go to CodePen, and we go to Pen, and we go to UL. See, if you don't have Emmet, life kind of sucks. List item, LI, UL. Okay, look, it's indenting. This is browsers interpret list items as needing to be indented. So it's got this default margin block start in 1em. I didn't do that. The browser does that. This is called a user agent style. It's just the CSS gods decided at some point that the padding on the inline axis should be 40 pixels, and it should have 1em of top and bottom margin, and it should have a bullet. That's called a marker. It should have a marker. They just decided that. So you got to remove that if you want it removed. All right. All right. Would you take a look at the site of mine? I send you a magic login. I have rebuilt some frame sections in Etch. I wonder if I did the right way. Yeah, maybe next week or next WDD we can look at that. Why did you use inline size instead of width? Good question. What you should do is go MDN logical properties, CSS logical properties and values, and read. Okay? It has a lot of additional benefits and none of the downsides. That's the short answer. Okay, will this be added to frames anytime soon? Yes. Okay. Why is a header component instead of a catch-all template? Ooh, like this question. And this comes from page builders and other tools that have used the wrong names for things. A header, let me go back to my index template. Okay, here's my header. A header is a component. Let's all repeat this together. Header is a component. A header is not a template. It is not a template. I don't care how many, I don't care Elementor, Bricks, they might call it a template. Breakdance might do it. I don't know. It's not a template. It's objectively not a template. It's a component. That's what it is. Don't call it a template. It goes in a template. It definitely lives in a template. It is not a template in itself, okay? So you make it a component because it's going to live in multiple templates. If I go to the template manager and I go to create a single post template and I edit it, oh, sorry, I edited the wrong one, edit single post template, oh, there it is again, my header, right? Now it exists in two places. Well, if something's going to exist in two places, it better be a component, right? Because you need to be able to manage it. If I need to swap my logo and my nav or something, I want that to happen in both places, okay? So that needs to be a component. So you don't, even though the header is going to go into a template, it's not going to be the only template that it lives in. Still going to exist in multiple places. So it needs to be a component. And it is just objectively not a template. When could we be able to use an SVG props for components? Very, 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 very soon. Okay. How does Etch play with local development in a Docker container by using local or it works the same way any other tool for WordPress works in local? Is there a good reason to shorten class names? FC, GR, BR instead of feature card, grid, Bravo. Great question, Michael. Oh, did he ask the other one too? Michael's on fire today. Okay. Let me go back to, let's go to the Content Hub, let's go to Pages, and let's go to Hero Section Alpha, okay? So we've got these class, Hero Section Alpha, and there may be even utility classes, right? Where we're like, that's kind of a long name. That name's getting a little long. Maybe we should abbreviate the entire thing. You go to something like Tailwind, okay? Look at this. Let's go to, oh, God, dude. Okay, where's the search? Margin. How about padding? Where are we? Oh, we're in Tailwind Plus. This is a different site. Tailwind. Bang, here. Okay, docs. Dude, how hard is it just to get to, okay, let's use any of these. So some of their things are not abbreviated. You see this, right? Where's margin and padding? Is there a place that's not abbreviated, not abbreviated? Maybe they've gone away with abbreviations, which I would really love, but I have a feeling that scroll padding, there we go. No, they're still doing it. They're still doing it. This kills me. Kills me. What is this? What? You can't tell me this is intelligent. This is absurdity. This is a nightmare scenario, guys. A nightmare. What is this? You look at this pixel. What? We have a thing called PX in CSS. It's a pixel. It stands for pixel. It doesn't stand for padding inline. What are we doing? Pixel, pixel. What padding inline, padding? What are we doing? Padding inline. What are we doing? This is not sanity. This is insanity, right? PY, pi, pix, PP, pix, pi. What? And then they just got random numbers. Have you seen the numbering situation going on here? It's absurdity. It's absurdity. So a bad scenario is when you abbreviate things. Abbreviations are bad. Here's why abbreviations are bad. 2 layers of learning and memorization. First, let's say you didn't know what you were doing. First, you have to learn what padding is. Then, and you have to padding inline, padding block, blah, 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 right? Then when you're using the framework, you have to learn the framework syntax. We don't call padding padding, we call padding P. Oh, we don't call padding block this, we call it PY. Oh, it's not padding inline, it's PX. So there's a second layer of learning and memorization. That's a bad scenario. That's objectively bad because it's way more work for only the benefit of shortening names, which isn't really a benefit. Like for whatever benefit you get shortening the name, you get way more cons, way more downsides, okay? Now that's bad. Now the nightmare scenario is, will we abbreviate some things but not everything? Now you have a third layer of learning. So first layer is, I gotta learn what the damn CSS property names are. Second layer of learning is, I gotta learn the syntax for the abbreviations. Third layer of learning is, I gotta remember what's abbreviated and not abbreviated, which you can never remember all of these things, okay? That's just nightmare scenario. So what fixes that? You know what fixes that? A general rule of thumb, do not abbreviate. If you just don't abbreviate, there's only one layer of learning. One layer, what is the property name? Oh, guess what? That's also the utility class name without any additional learning. That's fantastic. And somebody might be like, well, it's long. Yeah, it's long because it's explicitly meaning what it is. And there's no confusion and there's no guessing. There's no nightmares, okay? This is a nightmare scenario right here. Nightmare scenario. You know what Tailwind users rely on? They heavily rely on autocomplete, on Copilot, on copy and paste, on a whole bunch. They're not doing what I do with variables, where I just sit down and write it. The vast majority of cases, that's not what they're doing, right? You also have the scenario where if you really followed Tailwind, I mean, this could go off into a whole Tailwind like thing. Let's go back to CodePen. We don't have Tailwind in CodePen right now, but if I did, right? Here would be, let's do this in Etch. Let's just do this in Etch. Jeez Louise. Because we need Emmet. We need Emmet, okay? Let me add a section here, and let's just come down here and go P times 10, okay? P times 10, and let's say my paragraph, okay? Great, fantastic, boom. So now we have these 10 paragraphs. So here's what, they don't need classes, we're not gonna use classes, okay? We are in a second, just bear with me, right? I'm gonna give us more real estate to work with. CSS says like this, okay, you wanna style all of your paragraphs? Okay, we're gonna create a selector. So if I go to the style manager, that is now a selector that I can style, right? And if I go to one of my Ps, if I click on one of my Ps, I'm gonna see that selector added. And I can now say font size, let's say system UI, okay? This is not, I'm already using that, so it's not gonna change anything. But let's say, I'm sorry, font family. Font family, and then font size, I will go with like, you would never do this, but I'm just doing it. But do you notice how I affect every single paragraph? Because this is how CSS is purported to work. Like, it's extremely efficient. It's extremely efficient. Do you know what Tailwind asks you to do? Tailwind asks you to do this. Font family. I don't even know the stupid, like, let's go look. Let's go look. Let's zoom out of here. All right. Font family. Okay. Font family. There you go. All right. Font sans. Sorry. Let's do that. Cause you would program in like a sans font. Okay. Font sans. Okay. And then let's go to their font size. We can get rid of this. Let's go unpin. All right. Boom. I feel like these exercises are really important to go through and understand. Font size, okay? So here's a text, we'll do SM, okay? These don't actually work, but you're gonna get the point, okay? Text SM. And then whatever other styles needed to be here. And then you know what they want you to do? That's what they want you to do right there. That is explicit Tailwind, where it's like, we're just going to repeat ourselves a gazillion times. Literally, that's what they want you to do. And then, but then they're like, then they retreat, because if you just point this out and you're like, that's dumb. That's really dumb. And think about like, because then they're like, well, but I can do this. See? And I'm like, well, you gonna do that across your entire project? What are you gonna, like, okay, that works for this one little section, right? You gotta do all this crazy like find replace game, or you have to componentize this thing. This creates a lot of new problems that you have to solve. Where, just answer me, like, what was the problem with just doing the styles here? And just saying one area, we're just gonna apply all the styles to all these paragraphs in one place. Well, I mean, like, there's all these workarounds, fallbacks. They retreat away from like, oh yeah, this is a really good workflow, and then they're constantly having to retreat away from it. And it doesn't make any sense. It's not how CSS was designed to work. It doesn't make any sense. It creates a lot of additional problems that you have to solve for. It's just dumb. There's a lot of dumbness involved. Okay, I know some people like it and they feel like, I'm not saying there's zero benefits. I'm just saying that the cons largely outweigh the pros, especially in a page builder, especially in a page building context. But again, I'm not saying there's no pros, there's no benefits. I've never said that. I'm just saying a lot of it is dumb. A lot of it is really dumb. There's a lot of dumbness involved in getting to the benefits, right? Okay. All right. I've got literally 30 seconds. Will there be a back to WordPress dashboard button? That's right here. Now this will go, we may need like maybe a command click takes you to admin versus the actual page or template you happen to be editing at the time. Yeah, there may be a distinction that comes in there. Can you show a simple example of how to recreate the read more animated element from Nextbricks and Etch using that third-party library? Yeah, not in this live stream though. I think we'll keep doing this kind of thing if you guys found it helpful. Let me get back to the regular chat before we go. Okay. Just catching up on chat. If you guys find this format helpful, drop a comment below, and because we could do this, and maybe not even for the full entire time, but we could just talk like straight up dev philosophy and pros, cons, best practices, how you think about things, how you work through certain scenarios. We could do a little bit of that every single WDD live if you guys find this super helpful. Because I feel like it's never stuff that's covered in a video. A video is always like, here's how you do it. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. You never get into like the why though. Why though? Why do it that way versus other way? Why? What are the pros and cons of that method versus this other method? You know, is that really the best way to do it? I think that, and that's so important because that's how you really, really, really learn to make good decisions. You know? Okay. People say they like it. Okay. All right. Drop a like. I gotta go. I literally have a call right now. I'm a minute late for it. Okay. So drop a like, drop a comment. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I'll be back very, very soon. I love you guys. See you soon. Thanks for coming. Peace.